for
Glad
having
to have you here. Now, to start us off, Eden, have you ever traveled to Antarctica?
I have not, although I think the Instagram algorithm is on to me because it actually sent me a reel about a cruise that goes to Antarctica. And it explained that it was a very inexpensive cruise and very full of sights, in particular the Arctic animals. So I don't know. Maybe now I need to add a cruise to Antarctica to my bucket list.
It's a friend of a friend's brother went on one of those cruises, and
yeah.
They are told explicitly, do not touch or engage the animals, even when they're on their little excursions, but they don't tell the animals that. So the animals are like, so, buddy, tell me, why are you on Antarctica? And so they come up really close. It's like, how could you not, hug a penguin?
It's like you see the National Geographic photographers are they're photographing in art and there's a penguin on their back. So
right.
They're like,
no personal space. What is it? You look at that big swarm of penguins when they're trying to keep warm and yep, personal space is not a cultural cue in the penguin world.
No. I haven't heard much about penguins being too mean either. I don't know if I would approach a polar bear, but man, if I saw a road penguin, I would be tempted.
Yeah, I would be too. There's too many cute penguin movies too that make it hard not to.
And I mean, if they don't interact with humans too much, they probably don't know us to be predator or prey. So I mean, my guess is they'd approach it with curiosity, who is this?
Probably so.
I don't know. Maybe that's irresponsible of me, but I would say hi to a penguin.
Yes, I would too. So I would get a hand slap for that one, I'm sure. Well, Eden, what's the most extreme place you've ever traveled?
And, I'm honestly pretty boring. I've been on the East Coast most of my life. I grew up in Michigan, so that's not quite East Coast, but Eastern Standard Time, so close enough. And then I've been in North Carolina for the last 13 years, so the most extreme place that someone like me has gone was the West Coast. I went there briefly on a business trip for my day job to California.
Fun. What part of California?
That was extreme for me because that required 2 flights, not just one.
That is an extreme travel day, most definitely.
For me, absolutely. And I know some people who have done it so much, there's they might listen to this and be like, that is so sad. And I'd be like, yeah, I would agree. I don't get it.
It makes it exciting.
It does. Yeah. On the way back, I got stuck, I think, in Houston for a night because the plane didn't have a crew, which I thought was a very interesting problem.
That would be problematic for sure.
Yeah. Everybody was at the gate, the plane was there, but no crew. So they're like, "Yeah, you gotta spend the night and come back the next day for the next flight." And I'm like, "Fantastic."
Wonderful. You always wanted to stay in Houston, right?
Yeah. Houston Airport. It's lovely.
Lovely. I know. I've had a few, what was it? When I was younger, I was traveling with my high school band, and we were going one place, but ended up in Corpus Christi.
Oh,
and I have never experienced humidity that I could cut with a knife. When I went to Corpus Christi, I was like, and I'm from Texas, but Corpus Christi is its own beast.
Yeah. Yeah, thankfully I didn't leave the hotel or the airport. So if someone asked, have you been to Houston, I can technically say yes, but no.
There's both a lot to see and not a lot to see in Houston. I lived there for 7 years, so.
Yeah. Now, going to Texas is also on my bucket list, actually going to Texas. So I want to see an armadillo.
Most definitely.
They're there quite a bit. So.
Yes. We find them on the side of the road very often, unfortunately.
Rest in peace.
Love you. Too fun. Well, tell us a little bit about Arnie the Armadillo and his visit to Antarctica.
Yeah. So, Arnie the Armadillo is a story designed to sneakily expose children to a diverse vocabulary, in particular words that start with the letter A. I personally just love alliteration, and that's kind of how it all started. But the whole idea formed when I read an article by the NIH, and I have it stashed somewhere, that kind of noted that, kids learn linguistically best in that younger age range, which makes sense. That's why they recommend teaching another language when they're younger, and it's harder for, people like us who are a little bit older. So they learn really well in that, 1 to 5 age range. And I think a lot of people take that principle and apply it to bilingual education, but I think there's also an application for that knowledge just in the, in English, the language that a majority of the world uses. And I also think they're capable of learning, even in a different way, some of the more complex words. So Arnie the Armadillo does have some bigger words, like Antarctica. That's a multi-syllable word. Another fun addition to the end of the book, which a lot of my older readers really enjoy, the gallery of vocabulary words that they run across through the book, whether it be words or illustrations. And that's been really fun. I've had a lot of parents message me on DMs about their kids being like, oh, there's an axolotl in there. I didn't see that. And then they have to go back and find it. Or like, oh my gosh, there was an aardvark. Where was that? And then going back and finding it, even though it wasn't like a part of the text. So, lots of different ways to engage with it. I designed it for kids 3 to 5, but I've now have readers as young as 1 and as old as 10. So, my intended audience brought it when it launched.
Well, it's one of those, the good thing about children's books is it can go to a broad range, and then everybody reads at a different pace, and every kid needs to be challenged to step above their reading level a little bit, or to be introduced to words that are a challenge, or words they don't come across every day. And I love how you've, both with the glossary in the back, with axolotl and things that weren't directly in the story, but you're still having so many A words in there. And, what was it? I think I laughed out loud when Arnie was picking apricots in Antarctica.
Picking apples,
Apples in Antarctica. I was kind of like, that's funny.
So, fun fact about that, I did actually have this reviewed ahead of time by a small focus group of parents, as well as teachers and people in the education space. But I also learned through that experience, some adults are just fuddy-duddies. I had several recommendations that they're like, it's not realistic that there are apple trees in Antarctica. And I'm like, look at the cover. We're sending an armadillo to Antarctica. We lost reality, page 1.
On the cover. Here we go.
So I opted to keep that scene in, and it's honestly one of my favorite illustrations because I just think it's hilarious to see an armadillo trying to pull a frozen apple off of a frozen tree.
Yes. Well, it is really funny. And I think you do a great job of not just introducing alliteration and the letter A and all of the unique words that you use, but Arnie also has a story along the way where he forgets his coat. And, friendship and building friendship and being kind is also a message in it as well. Did you intend to put a little bit of moralistic, I think,
so, and I don't know, this might be getting a little analytical for a children's book, but so I studied English, I studied writing. So, when you've studied it as a profession, you kind of learn every story. It has to have a purpose. It's pretty hard to just have, it has to have a beginning, a climax, and an end. So 9 times out of 10, they always teach you about the hero's journey. Something's got to happen, and then the main character has to then overcome that challenge, and then it brings it to a conclusion. So without it, I kind of feel like a story would just kind of feel like it's floating out there or feel unfinished without some sense of structure. So, yes, that was purposeful, kind of just for the sense of making sure that the story just didn't hang there. But I also think, once again, the whole idea was teaching vocabulary in a way that they don't know they're learning. It's not, I don't market it as an educational book. It is just that, it's a book. And I think, with that with the story being able to incorporate some things like, helping, like Arnie helps out an elderly anteater on the airplane, or, his friend Albert, spoiler alert, there's an alpaca in there, or Albert, offering his Argyle sweater to Arnie at the end. Like, those are small things that I think, are easy to incorporate just into the grand story of things, and it's kind of another way that you can teach while not making it overtly like it's not an educational. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, because okay. I think that the story brings the reader through, and like you said, they don't know that they're learning new things. But that is the great thing about Arnie's story, is that a kid is just following this curious armadillo as he's going on an adventure, but along the way, these unique things like picking apples in Antarctica and meeting an alpaca, are kind of just, they're not thrown in, but you're kind of just along the way, you're like, okay, there is more to this book than just an armadillo in Antarctica. And I think that makes kids turn pages, and in a disguise, they're learning along the way, which we love.
My literary idol, I could say, is Dr. Seuss. That's why I wore my special author shirt. And one thing I loved, and what kind of inspired Arnie as I was putting the story together, is I just loved the organized chaos that is Dr. Seuss. And I think, if anyone hasn't read Dr. Seuss that's listening to this, I would ask them pause, go read Cat in the Hat or Thoughts and Sots, and then come back and you'll know what I'm talking about. But it's a very wild ride when you're reading a Dr. Seuss book, and even you're surprised along the way. And so with Arnie, obviously I didn't go into fake characters, like Wackets and all that. I stuck with reality, but I kind of wanted to keep an element of that organized chaos. Like, okay, why is an alpaca in Antarctica? He just is, and or why on earth is he trying to pick frozen apples off of a apple tree? He just is. Like, it's just, and you leave it, and I think I always loved it as a kid, and it's my hope that the readers that I have are going to, I found it memorable, and I'm hoping that the kids that read it will kind of have that same positive and fond memories of the book when they grow up and they're like, why did I read a book about X? Like, why on earth did I read about an armadillo going to Antarctica?
Yeah.
So hopefully, with you having read it, you might have seen kind of some of that chaoticness there, which was purposeful.
And, it's one of those, like, that's the way kids think. They don't think in a very linear fashion. Every kid's a little different, but there is that chaoticness. And when we welcome that bizarre way of thinking, that unique and creative way of thinking, it allows kids to connect even more with the book, because this is the way I think. What are other A words we could throw in here? It doesn't have to make sense. And so I think that that's what makes kids just love a book all the more, as it speaks to the way their brain is operating. And I think Arnie does a great job there.
And hopefully engages their imagination a little bit, because you do have to use your imagination to think about a desert animal in an Arctic continent. Like, even if they don't know that they're thinking of a desert animal in an Arctic continent, we can tell one of these things is not like the other, but we can make it work. So hopefully there's also that added bonus for them as they're adventuring with Arnie to the letter A.
Too fun. Now, did you always want to be a children's author?
That's a funny. No, actually. So
not even with the English major?
So I studied professional writing, or business writing is usually what a lot of people better understand, and that's what I practice in my day job. So, but in college, so I have a business writing degree with a minor in medieval studies. So,
perfect combination there.
Perfect fit. Yeah, great combination. And I loved writing essays. So I always kind of thought I was going to end up becoming an essayist. or work in the adult nonfiction route. But let's see, I wanted to become a writer when I was 14. So I'm 27 now. And so it's been 13 years. And none of the ideas for adult nonfiction ever stuck. None of them. Like, I've had 5 or 6 where, I've even bought research books for some concepts and, like, kind of went the whole 9 yards. It just didn't happen. And then I was thinking one day about, like, Dr. Seuss, and I thought, well, maybe that could be an area to venture into. Because I said I kind of missed. I have some little people in my life. They're not kids, but I know people. And as I kind of hear a lot of the frustrations with children's literature, I was like, well, yeah, let's just make one, because they don't read, they don't read some of the same stuff now. Like, maybe they need a fresh, new, like, I don't know, new version of Dr. Seuss or what I love, because I kind of wanted to mix Dr. Seuss and Winnie the Pooh, two of my favorite, like, little things. That's why I wanted the innocence and the adorableness of, like, Arnie, but with some of that chaos that Dr. Seuss brought. So that's kind of what I was going for, like a strategic combination of the both. But so yeah, did I expect to get into children's literature? No. But you kind of learn as a writer if inspiration strikes, write it down. So my first draft of Arnie is actually written on a notebook. And I think I left it for 4 or 5 months. And then I was talking to a friend and talked about children's literature, and I was like, well, I have thought about doing one, and then here we go. Very long-winded answer, but the short answer is no. But the long answer is here we are.
You took the long road to get to where you are, right?
Yes, and lots of failed attempts at writing, being a writer just in general. So never give up.
That's right. What did they say? I've seen something where the abbreviation for fail is like, I wish I could remember it. I'll have to find it, but it's like,
yeah,
still learning is kind of what somehow FAIL.
Yeah.
Comes out to some little saying with that.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of learned from the experience, like, you sometimes just have to look at things from a different angle. Like, I was genuinely frustrated that I'd gone this far in my career and none of, like, the inspiration wasn't there behind a lot of the ideas and what I thought I should be doing. And then kind of, when I just literally switched from adult to children, and somehow the inspiration was there. So here we are.
Too fun. Well, what was the most? You talked about Dr. Seuss and Winnie the Pooh. Are there any other children's books that have been really impactful for you?
Honestly, growing up, those were the big ones. In my younger adult years, I should say, like the 7, 8, 9, 10. Those. Well, that's that still. Yeah, I read them pretty long. I love the Wishbone series, so that's why I went into medieval literature. So, my favorite book was A Pup in King Arthur's Court, which was the Wishbone version of A Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court. Excellent book. Both of them are great. Highly recommend. I read it. It was like my favorite section in the library. I read them over and over and over again. I collect them now, and I hope one day when I have kids, I can pass on my Wishbone collection to them. But as far as when I was younger, Dr. Seuss kind of reigned in the house. So, bless my parents, my dad would read us Spots and Socks at night, and if anyone's read that and try to read it out loud, you'll understand why that's a real sacrifice.
It is. Or one fish, two fish, red fish, blue fish.
Yeah, 10 Apples Up on Top was my jam.
Nice.
10 Apples Up on Top was one of my favorite. I actually just recently bought a copy because I realized we didn't have one. At the same time, my sister also bought a copy because she realized she didn't have one. So we both have a copy of 10 Apples Up on Top. So that is an excellent story that makes zero sense.
Makes zero sense, but it is.
It is great.
It's great. Yeah, it's one of those books that, again, that chaotic mind that kids have. I mean, kids are like, yeah, let's do this.
Like, yeah, balance an apple on her head. Oh, we'll add another one now. They've got 2 apples on them. Probably learn some math along the way if you really wanted to.
There is that introduction of both rhyme and counting, and I think that's the mark of a really amazing book, is one that they're learning along with having so much fun. And that's what we want as authors, is to make reading fun and enjoyable and to be an experience, not just Jack and Jill went up the hill. We want there to be action and enjoyment and emotion in all the things. So what is it? What can we expect next from you? Where is Arnie going to travel next?
Yeah, so obviously it's alphabet themed, so he will be going somewhere else. It has not been written yet, but I have aspirations of Brazil. So believe it or not, I do actually research where he's going. So before I find, because you got to figure out what's there and then what you can use to come up with, e-vocabulary. So I have aspirations of him backpacking in Brazil. So if that's actually what's going to happen, I don't know, but that's kind of the direction that I'm going so far. He might stop off in Boston on his way there. I thought he might have a brother, so
There's a lot of B words to choose from. It's just putting them all in order in that chaotic, fun way.
But you got to put it in a way that still makes it fit together. Like, you can't just throw words on a page, and even if it is chaotic, like, it still has to have some sense of order and some sense of
purpose.
Yeah, purpose as you're going through the book. So that's the part I haven't figured out, is what thread is going to tie it all together so it doesn't seem like we're sending him all over the place.
Dear friends, is your goal to do all of the letters of the alphabet?
I would love to. So I'm a self-published author, which means self-funded. So the goal at a minimum would be to do ABC. And if I can get the momentum, then continue forward with the rest of the letters. But I thought at the very least a trilogy. But yes, I would love to see Arnie go through all the different letters and meet new friends that also start with different letters along the way. So this one just kind of, it launched in November, so it's been out on the market now for 2.5 months. So I've still got some time to go. So if anybody would like to see more books, they can do so by purchasing Arnie the Armadillo, because making new ones depends on the sales of this. So if you love the concept and you're listening to this, then follow on Instagram and buy on Amazon.
Do fun. I think there's a great opportunity for teachers and stuff to bring in a new book that can for their preschool or their kindergarten classroom, because we have had a lot of people coming from other countries, even in our own school system, where they're struggling with the language barrier, and just to have those words to continually practice and work through as they are learning the language. It's a great tool to have in your back pocket. So I'm excited to see if we get through just ABC or if we go all the way to Z, because that'll be fun. Because, of course,
me too.
It obviously has to be a zebra and Z, but there's not very many Z words.
Would be tough.
Z and X, you're going to have your work cut out for you. But
yeah, we might have to start getting to microorganisms if we enter into X.
Yeah. Even with Z's, too. There's some microorganisms there. Well, fun.
Thankfully, that's all the way at the end of the alphabet. That's a problem for, 2040 Eden.
There you go. We're just focused on the letter B right now.
Yes.
So fun. Well, Eden, where can people find out more about you and your books?
Yeah, I always encourage people to follow Arnie on Instagram. So that's at Arnie the Armadillo. From there, there's a link tree in my bio that takes you to literally everywhere. But that's where I provide major updates. So if you have any listeners local to the Charlotte, North Carolina area, that's where where I pop up doing signed books. Or if you're in a different state, that's where they can find my Amazon or Etsy link, where they can purchase Arnie through there. And there's I also have a website which will kind of take you to the same spot, but that's meetarnie.com.
So fun. Well, I look forward to hearing more about Arnie and his adventures and following along with you, and hoping our listeners do the same. Thank you so much for being with us, Eden.
Yes, thank you for having me.
And thank you for joining Eden and me on this episode of the Bookworthy Podcast. Check out the show notes for any books or links that we discussed. And let us know in the comments if you've ever traveled to Antarctica, or what's the most extreme place that you have traveled to. Be sure to like and subscribe so we can discover more great books together. Happy reading!